She's not alone.
And here, and on this channel, I talk about ladies. This series is about one of the biggest movie franchises out there, with perhaps the largest quantity of female characters. So let's explore the quality. Welcome to the MCU.
All your colleagues, they don't respect you. They don't even see you. Do you honestly expect they'll change their minds?
I expect I will make them.
She doesn't have any superpowers, but she has her wit and her speed and her intelligence.
You would say, do as Peggy says. She never doubts her own self-worth. But if that day comes, I know who I want by my side.
Just filling in the details of what she did with that life and how rich it was and how she became a leader in her own right.
Thank you, Agent Flynn. But as has always been the case, I don't require your help.
What's your name, darling?
Agent.
Today, allow me to introduce you to the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D., Peggy Carter, and how important she is to the universe. We'll talk about what makes her feel real, her place in the story, and how that has changed over the years. Let's get started.
I could do this all day.
Much of the MCU's success, compared to other comic book movies, is due to the fact that the world feels real. The focus is on the humanity of our hero, not their stats, and that works out well for all of our characters, who are thus treated as authentic members of this universe instead of objects in the story. For the ladies, that often means seeing traits that women rarely have in these kinds of movies.
America's golden boy and a lot of other good men are dead because you had a crush.
It wasn't that.
And for Peggy, that means getting angry.
I had him!
And not in the way female characters are usually portrayed, as mildly annoyed or as hysterical. Instead, her anger is understandable and even supported by the audience.
How you holding up, sweetie?
Quite bored, actually.
We'll handle the rough stuff.
One thing that intrigues me about What If, the animated series, is what Marvel considers to be canon about the characters. Even as they're put in completely different circumstances, what has to remain the same to be recognizably that character?
Killmonger.
The answer for Peggy is that she will always stand up for what she believes in.
Agent Carter, what are you doing? This is our only chance. Now!
In her show, she's willing to aid an alleged traitor because she knows he would never willingly hurt people.
I knew Howard Stark during the war. His help was invaluable. He may be a great many things, but he's not a traitor.
In the multiverse, she steps up to become Captain Carter because, well, it's the right thing to do.
It has to be now. Do you know how much this costs? We won't get another shot at this.
And across the main MCU, she stands up for Hank Pym when her colleagues go around his back.
You've already lied to him. Now you want to go to war with him.
And she gives Steve Rogers advice that guides him through a rough time, more than once.
Then stop blaming yourself. Allow Barnes the dignity of his choice.
All we can do is our best. And sometimes the best that we can do is to start over.
So she believes in people, but she has little patience for those who disappoint her. Since Peggy doesn't back down from what she knows is right, she gets mad when others are not doing the same.
Tell me that isn't what I think it is.
When the men around her underestimate what she can do, she figures out how to do everything herself, and usually gives them a piece of her mind in the process.
If they wanted to make me feel useful, they wouldn't have made me work with you.
And we in the audience are always on her side. Peggy is never wrong when she's angry.
Looks like finding a partner wasn't that hard after all.
And this is established in her very first scene, where she's introduced to both the audience and to these soldiers.
Gentlemen, I'm Agent Carter.
Normally I'm hesitant to use a character introduction as an example because a lot of the time, especially if it's for a lady, this carefully crafted introduction is the coolest thing she's ever going to do. And they fail to come up with any other cool things for her to do as the story progresses. But fortunately, this is a perfect introduction to a consistent character who acts like this in all of her iterations. So let's take a look.
I supervise all operations for this division.
Hodge immediately immediately questions her authority.
What's with the accent, Queen Victoria?
Probably not what a soldier in his position should be doing.
Thought I was signing up for the U.S. Army.
She asks his name, the usual response to insubordination.
What's your name, soldier?
He pushes back further, rejecting her authority.
Gilmore Hodge, Your Majesty.
She clearly has a plan for how to deal with these kinds of situations.
Step forward, Hodge. Put your right foot forward.
And he tries to turn this into flirting, which is, unwise.
Because I got a few moves I know you'll like.
So she responds in a way that, frankly, I'm sure most of us ladies have wished we could in a professional setting. Good for her. Colonel Phillips supports her decision, backing her up as an authority figure in this division.
I can see that you are breaking into candidates. That's good.
And of course, Steve is delighted by it, setting him up as one of the few who knows her value.
Agent Carter.
Her anger is validated by the film here and every other time it happens.
You can't give me orders!
Across the years and multiverses, Peggy is clever and stands by her beliefs, but she is also disappointed, impatient, sarcastic, devastated, and most of all, angry at anyone who undervalues what she can do.
I got away with it because no one looks at me. Because unless I have your reports, your coffee, or your lunch, I'm invisible.
Her emotions and reactions are justified, and she's not just around to be emotional support for Steve or any of her other co-stars. Peggy is her own person, and her consistent presence across the universe makes it feel real.
I know my value. Anyone else's opinion doesn't really matter.
This is a story about superheroes, and one key feature of these movies is that everyone can be smart and heroic, not just the main character. Peggy Carter demonstrates that all across the multiverse.
Stop!
Can I be of any further assistance?
The first time we see her, Peggy arranges for Steve to go rescue the 107th, his first act as Captain America, the hero, instead of just a showman.
You gotta let me go.
I can do more than that.
Though her relationship with Steve is essential for most of the film, Peggy unfortunately doesn't have a lot of direct contributions to the plot.
Agent Carter, don't you think you would be more comfortable in the booth?
Oh, yes, of course. Sorry.
But she still sets herself apart by being included in the action right along with Captain America instead of being left behind. So that's certainly an improvement on many otherwise similar characters we've seen before.
Wonderful weather this morning, isn't it?
Yes, but I always carry an umbrella.
We're gonna go chronologically through her life here. During the war, she and the Howling Commandos capture the last Hydra base, including all the artifacts Dr. Reinhardt had acquired.
These assets are now under the protection of the Strategic Scientific Reserve.
She later questions him and arranges for him to go away for a long time.
Nothing stays buried forever.
For as long as I have a say, you will.
After the war ends, she works for the SSR in New York City, where she brings in the mysterious Zodiac substance.
You took a mission last night.
I completed a mission last night.
Then runs her own investigation into the theft of Howard Stark's inventions. She neutralizes a few, destroys others, and generally keeps them out of the wrong hands.
You're asking me to become a traitor in order to prove you're not one. You do see the irony.
My technology in the hands of some nut that wants to be the next Red Skull. You're the only one that can stop that.
Later, she solves a plot that involved using zero matter and manages to keep that under wraps too, after defeating Whitney Frost.
Whitney Frost, you're under arrest!
And of course, then she founds S.H.I.E.L.D.
Tell her she'll be running S.H.I.E.L.D. with me.
Margaret Carter was known to most as a founder of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Unfortunately off-screen at this point, but Peggy founds the agency with Howard Stark and his director herself for a long time. In that role, she protects Hank Pym and his research from, as it turns out, a Hydra agent.
We shouldn't let him leave the building.
You've already lied to him, now you want to go to war with him.
So that's an impressive career, and she clearly had quite an impact on the universe over the years.
I asked her once how she managed to master diplomacy and espionage in a time when no one wanted to see a woman succeed at either.
But then we also have the alternate version of her in What If, where she becomes Captain Carter in place of Steve becoming Captain America. We even get a live-action version of the character as a cameo in Doctor Strange.
The world needs heroes.
As Captain Carter, she fights Hydra during the war, rescues the 107th, and single-handedly stops the creature that Red Skull summons. She becomes a guardian of the multiverse, and she talks down an alternate version of Natasha Romanoff so that then they have a tool to defeat the Infinity Ultron.
Give him all you've got! Don't give him a chance to think!
Captain Carter later saves Senator Barnes from this version of Steve Rogers, where he's a tool of the Red Room. She and Natasha also take care of that situation.
Are you alright?
No.
We need to run!
Of course we do.
She gets up to some adventures in 1602, mainly ensuring that the timeline won't be wiped out.
You need to trust me and hand over the scepter.
Then she defeats this dark version of Doctor Strange and throws him in the Soul Forge to save all these people and universes. Then she has a few good ideas in the effort to track down the Watcher, ultimately sacrificing herself to save him. What exactly is canon and what isn't are unclear at this point, but Peggy has been one of the most commonly reoccurring characters. Quite a feat when she's in a different time period than most of them, and she always makes an impression when we see her.
Are you ready for our dance?
So Peggy may have only had a small part in most of her appearances, but her mark has been made, and her place as an essential part of the universe is secured.
Knowing that you helped found S.H.I.E.L.D. is half the reason I stay.
Now, Peggy Carter is unique in a few ways when compared to any of the other ladies in the MCU, which affects the perception of her for both the writers and for us, so let's start there. First, there's the fact that she's introduced in a period piece. The first Avenger is set in a time that most of the audience will regard in a romantic light due to our cultural conceptions of the 40s.
Greater world, a better world.
Because of the genre expectations, we will view her with a sort of bittersweet nostalgia. That sets her apart from the modern ladies. Much of the scrutiny placed on Captain Marvel or Black Widow are not applied to Peggy because she's literally from another time.
Ladies, come on. My grandmother has more life in her, God rest her soul.
It also means that she's generally unavailable to feature in any of the movies set in the present day, while being a very popular character, which builds audience excitement for her spin-off show, and especially for her frequent cameos.
Imagine it.
Second, this movie is a love story, more so than probably any other MCU movie. There are romantic storylines frequently, but this is the only one where the will they won't they of the relationship is a significant part of the plot.
What are we waiting for?
The right partner. 0800, Captain.
Peggy is a catalyst for a lot of events in Steve's life, and how he reacts to their changing dynamic leads to his actions as a hero.
So are you two? Do you fondue?
So Peggy is perhaps more of a love interest than the rest of the ladies in terms of story structure, at least. And that means any storyline that takes her out of that template is going to have more resonance than it might otherwise. Natasha, for example, is an improvement on a lot of lady spies we've seen before, but Peggy is breaking more stringent genre conventions from the 40s just by being included.
Colonel? We are taking the fight to Hydra. Pack your bags, Agent Carter.
So combining the romance of the past with her setup as a character to love goes a long way in building up the mythos of Peggy Carter. Let's explore how that worked. First, of course, we have her introduction, which I feel she doesn't get a lot to do as far as female characters in this franchise go. Unlike, say, Pepper, there is no real indication that Peggy exists as a character outside of scenes with or about Steve.
Hi.
What are you doing here?
Officially, I'm not here at all.
It's his movie, sure. Obviously, it's going to be about him. But even Betty had some indication of what she gets up to when Bruce isn't around.
Oh, come on, Stan. It's Friday night.
Peggy just sort of appears to move Steve's story along, and we don't check out what she's up to if he's not there.
Captain, We're ready for you.
I don't mean to offend anybody who clicked on this video, but the nostalgic paintbrush of this film is doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of Peggy as a character. Combined with the fact that we've all seen plenty of World War II stuff and almost never a character like her on the front lines and all. So she definitely stands out here and is very cool. But if you're used to all of the other things she gets up to, going back to this one is a little disappointing. This definitely feels like, proto-Peggy.
With respect, sir, I don't regret my actions.
The next time we saw her was the charming Agent Carter one-shot. At the time, Marvel released several of these one-shots, which were just brief, usually fun explorations of the connected universe, seeing what characters got up to after their movie appearances.
You see, there's somebody who wants to meet you. You took his name, and now he wants it back.
The Agent Carter TV show kind of retcons this, and so how canon it is varies, as I'll come back to. But it was definitely the most popular of these one-shots, or at least the most talked about in my experience. I don't really know how to gauge its popularity, but obviously there was enough buzz that they brought her back for a cameo in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., probably to test the waters and gauge interest in her having her own show.
But if that day comes, I know who I'd want by my side.
The best part of her cameo in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is, of course, her reunion with the Howling Commandos. It would have been lovely for them to have a show, honestly. But it was great to see her working with them, something we missed out on in the first movie.
Well, these things can't simply be boxed up. Someone needs to establish a permanent unit during peacetime.
Then she has a few brief cameos in the films. Steve visits her and she gives him some advice.
And sometimes the best that we can do is to start over.
Which he follows at the end of the movie.
S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra. It all goes.
And her lapse in memory mirrors the reaction of another ghost from his past who has forgotten him.
You're alive. You came back.
But I knew him.
This is also the first time most of us will have heard that she founded S.H.I.E.L.D.
Knowing that you helped found S.H.I.E.L.D. is half the reason I stay.
There's Stark's father.
Howard.
Who's a girl?
Next, in Age of Ultron, where she is a part of a hallucination Steve has.
Are you ready for our dance?
I am not a fan of this film, and you shouldn't be either, so we're not going to go down the road of how this fits into his arc.
Family, stability, guy who wanted all that went in the ice 75 years ago.
But it certainly adds to our impression of Peggy and how important she is in this universe.
Imagine it.
Followed by an older Peggy in Ant-Man, where she sides with Hank Pym as he quits working for them. It's one of the only times we see her as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Love her hair. And certainly it kept her in the public consciousness so they could hype up her new show. Season 1 of Agent Carter premiered while Season 3 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was on hiatus during January and February. It had the same time slot and was a self-contained show to enjoy after the mid-season finale of S.H.I.E.L.D. So it was a good move to put it there and keep the S.H.I.E.L.D. fans tuning in at the same time every week. I gotta say that Season 1 is absolutely my favorite thing Peggy has ever been in. It's a great show.
Good day for singing a song, and it's a good day.
But it also metatextually grapples with how you, the viewer, may consider Peggy as Captain America's girlfriend first, an agent of the SSR second.
Betty Carver tidies up while the men defend their country.
What a beautiful day to mend these pants. They've got me all tied up. If only Captain America were here to rescue me.
Who writes this rubbish?
In the show, the people in her life underestimate her because of her relationship with Steve.
I'm sure being Captain America's liaison brought you into contact with all sorts of interesting people.
And the subtle premise of this season is to test out what exactly Peggy is capable of on her own.
Hey, come on, Peg. I know they're not using you right over there.
And this matches perfectly with the setting, where many women who had followed Rosie the Riveter into the factory were finding themselves abruptly sent home when the men returned from war.
They let 10 girls go yesterday.
Did they say why?
Because 10 more GIs got discharged.
So having the chance to make a difference was apparently for a limited time, and Peggy is going through what many of her contemporaries were experiencing.
I had to show a guy from Canarsie how to use a rivet gun.
But the war's over. Let the professionals decide who's worth going after.
It's great, check it out. It made the best use of Peggy, in my opinion, because her character journey is mirrored by the structure and themes of the show as a whole.
Good work, Carter.
Nice job.
Season 2 is not quite as thematically cohesive, I think, though part of that is because Peggy's arc isn't as clearly defined as it was in the first season, and also it leaves us on a bit of a cliffhanger.
Give me a second.
Peggy does continue her friendship with Jarvis and even gets a love interest or two, so her character is expanded, and it would have been very nice if the show had continued.
My whole life is in New York. My roommate, my job, my plane ticket's already booked.
Of course.
Instead, we got another movie cameo, Barely, where they established that she has passed away to add to Steve's problems in Civil War. I wouldn't say this counts as fridging, by the way, but in retrospect, I do think it's a bit of a problem. Because her show was canceled, her character was killed off without the actress involved in the movie, and then we didn't see her again for almost 4 years. So it kind of seemed like Haley Atwell was in the doghouse. And this felt like a very long time because the MCU had like 9 movies between the end of season 2 and the next time we actually saw her. Which is, of course, the controversial ending for Steve in Endgame. Steve stumbles into her office. She is the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. She's doing her job. We can't hear what she's talking about. But this inspires him to return to her, which is how we finish the movie. Now, most of the controversy is about this as a culmination of Steve's arc, which I'm not going to get into, because this is Peggy's video, and also I talk about ladies on this channel.
Only. A safe community for modern female professionals.
I do want to preface my critique by saying that I am not a fan of this ending because of its execution, not because I wanted a different ending or because I shipped either of them with someone else. Overall, I just feel like this is a shame because Peggy has nothing to do in this movie and not even any lines. When speaking up for herself is like her whole thing.
Because you had a crush.
It wasn't that.
It's not even Captain America's old flame.
How dare you?
You shouldn't let him leave the building.
You've already lied to him. Now you want to go to war with him.
Is there anyone else alive who holds you in such high esteem?
I can trust the actions of men who don't respect me more than those who do.
What's your name, darling?
Agent.
Why couldn't she be part of the shenanigans? We didn't have a couple of minutes to spare for her to be included in a meaningful way. She gets no more than Jane Foster, and for that one, Natalie Portman didn't even have to show up. Second, Infinity War severs 2 romantic couples as part of the wound that the Avengers will have to fix in Endgame. So it makes a lot of sense for the story to end on a romantic note to show how the world has healed. But that's a problem. The later heroes may have more romantic arcs, but you gotta end the Infinity Saga with someone who was in it all along. Tony's obviously gonna die sacrifice style. Thor's previous movies with Jane were generally unpopular, so that's not gonna work, because we also haven't seen her in a long time. Bruce and Natasha had mixed reviews, and also she's dead. Whoops. Maybe squandered the girl one there. So that leaves Steve. And that means bringing back Peggy because of the romantic nostalgia she inspires instead of who she is as a character, and also because they failed to establish Sharon in any meaningful way. Her episode coming soon. And if you feel a little offended by how clinically I went through that process, then yeah, that's why I don't care for it. For one thing, Peggy had 2 seasons of moving on from Steve. First from him directly,
Nothing for me but to love.
Then having other romantic interests. For another thing, it really feels like a regression to put her back in the love interest role when we fell in love with her for what she is beyond that. Her show seems to have been removed from canon, if this Legends video is any indication. And without that really solidifying the character, all of these cameo appearances don't add up to a lot of substance for Peggy. They make her fairly one-dimensional. So, if we must end on a romantic note to have a happy ending, instead of just, having all the remaining heroes together, which is what I would have preferred, I kind of feel like we should have ended with Hawkeye going home. This is how the movie started, after all, so why wouldn't we end it with his family?
Let's go.
Yes, her introduction was to an exciting character who broke the mold in some ways, and who would go on to do so even more over the years. In short,
They have lived a life.
bringing her back here to wordlessly smile and close out a universe that dropped her abruptly 9 movies ago and erased her most impactful appearance. Just seems like a really cynical move. Like we just needed to check this box off on our list, and she was the person available to be put into this spot. Instead of doing any legwork to set up that this is a happy ending for her, that this is what she would have wanted, she doesn't even get to talk. She has literally nothing to say about this.
You lousy Krauts are in big trouble once Captain America gets here.
You will bow down to the Führer.
Angie, would you mind changing that? Oh, you bet.
So yeah, if we get no more of this version of her, I'm gonna be pretty disappointed because it feels like a waste of one of the most interesting characters they had.
Where's Peggy?
I was therefore relieved when we at least got a really cool alternate version of her. She's still Peggy, the one we know, but she gets to be the hero of the story instead. Except, does she? I gotta say, I feel like Steve being the Hydra Stomper undervalues Captain Carter. Original Peggy didn't get a suit to go fight alongside Steve, Steve!
Hey, Peggy. Now you owe me one.
And in a surprising number of these episodes, it was actually really difficult for me to write the list earlier because she doesn't really do anything single-handedly or make any plot-relevant choices. She's helpful, certainly, but other characters are usually the ones to push the button and save the day.
I'm sure somewhere out there, we do.
So as happy as I was to see her and keep exploring what she can do, and obviously I prefer this version of Peggy.
Did it work?
And then some. You won't be needing those hills anymore.
I am quite disappointed by the ending, where she dies to save this one guy. Like, okay.
I am not losing any friends today!
Honestly, I feel like Peggy perfectly embodies the MCU as a whole. The benefits at the start of experiencing this shared universe meant that she popped up all the time.
Seeing you gives me a real boost.
We had this familiar character for any scene set in the past, and we were always excited to see her. Then she got a spin-off all about her, which fully fleshed out who she is. And that was kind of the promise of the MCU at the start, the potential we were setting up where any character you really liked could potentially get their own spin-off. But as soon as that was no longer popular, they just dropped her completely from everything. And they only brought her back to cash in on that earlier goodwill they had built with her. So we had this final hurrah, which again kind of ignores all of her character growth and how she's changed over the years. Which again, I think they could have fixed by just having her actually have something to do in the scenes in which she appears. And then we have this alternate version of her who is very exciting, but unlike the season of her show, the fact that she is now the main character as Captain Carter is not something that What If really delves into. So it's just kind of another way to watch her die. Many of the Phase 1 women are now dead, but we've seen her death 3 times, and I can't say I'm a fan of that. Peggy really is the poster child for why people became disillusioned with the franchise. Her mythology was set up, and we had a good run finding out more and more about it along the way, but then it's just over, and it never really lived up to her potential, and that's such a shame. But hey, remember all the times she stood up to men who underestimated her? At least we'll always have that, Peggy.
What would Cap say if I left his best girl behind?
He would say, do as Peggy says.
In any case, Peggy Carter is a brave, heroic woman who does not hesitate to stand up for her beliefs and do the right thing. She has little patience with those who are not on her level, and her emotions are justified as she reacts to a world that often devalues her. The impact of her character may have lessened over time, but she still comes off as an essential part of the MCU.
And you know what I'm capable of.
Thank you for listening to me talk about the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D. Join my Patreon for more on Peggy and what her costumes tell us about her. Next time we'll talk about another essential agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss it. See you then.